Hello everybody and welcome to the Ant Pod, where today we discuss how to leave your ants at home for a vacation. Today I'm once more joined by Lynn and Jake, and starting off with Lynn. First of all, Lynn, hello, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm quite alright.
Well, that's better than me. I'm sitting here with a small headache, but hopefully I'll be on my B game, because A game is definitely not optimal. But Lynn, how often do you travel away from your ants?
Well, normally I don't actually go away for more than 2 to 3 days. But this year we went to England for AntCon and I stayed away for more than 13 days, which is a record because I do not like leaving my house and leaving my pets up for someone else to care for.
I think that's very good to hear, actually, because if you've been that far away, you have some tips at least. Because I don't think, normally I'm... So, hang on, B game, guys. So, when you're away from 3 days, do you then do anything special, or do you just leave them then?
They get some sugars before I leave, and then I check the water reservoirs, and when that's all in order, I just go. Pretty easy.
Alrighty. Alright, so, we also have Jake. Jake, how are you doing?
I'm all good, thanks. Yeah, lovely week off work, so... Yeah, I'm chilling.
Well, I hope the weather have been nice in the UK then. But either way, Jake, how often do you travel away from your ants?
Well, there's AntCon, and that's about it, really. Anything else, I'll go away, like, camping for a couple of days, but it's only a couple of days, so I don't really have to do anything special. I spend all my money on ants instead of holidays, so yeah.
Right,
Don't happen too much.
Well, I'm on the same team as you both. I mean, I think for the past 2 years, I think I've left for the maximum of 7 days. I do have some sort of routine when I leave for 7 days, but other than that, normally it's like a extended weekend to AntCon. And well, to just start with my experience, what I do when I'm preparing for a vacation, like traveling to AntCon, I give them a big feed of protein. However, not so much that it starts to rot in there, but still I give them a little bigger than usual. I top up all of the water, I hydrate all of the nest, and I give them sugar. And then, because I've had some traumatic experiences with leafcutters escaping from DIY setups in the past, I have someone coming every day to feed the cats and look at the ants. That's the nice thing with the cats, because I have to get someone to come over here and feed the cats. And while they're here, they can look at the ants. And last time it was my mother, and I said to her, yeah, just go in and take a look at them, make sure they're not escaping. And she was like, well, what if they are escaping? Then you call me, Mom. Just call me and we'll take it from there. It depends on who is escaping, but we'll take it from there. But yes, that's pretty much my experience. When I go for longer, well, I guess it's the same, because I don't have... I guess I'm starting to have... Actually, hang on. All right, rewind. Actually, last year I went to Italy for a week, and actually had someone feed my ants in the middle of the week. I made a whole lot of frozen food. I froze some roaches, and therefore I could feed all of the ants, and they just didn't get their usual midweek cleaning. So I got someone to come and just feed them pre-killed frozen roaches, so it was very easy, and they didn't really have to take out a living roach and cut it up and all of that. But Jake, what do you do when you prepare for a vacation?
The main thing I do is I just make sure they've definitely got enough water. And if I was going away for like really long, I guess I'd give most of me colonies like a 100 ml sprinkler if I can, or something like that. So like they definitely don't run out of water. And before I go though, I always make sure I give them a little bit of sugar as well. Maybe a few kind of sugar granules out of the kind of dry stuff, because it kind of lasts a bit longer, but I don't really get too into that. Main thing I do though is I just go round all the setups, but like before I left for AntCon, I just checked everything of all the setups to make sure they weren't going to escape or anything. And that's when I did find that, well, the leaf cutter's rope was going to fall down like any day soon. And when it did, hundreds of them were going to escape. And I kind of knew it was coming, so I thought I better not leave it while I go to AntCon, because it'll happen while I'm not here, because that's just how it goes.
Why is it about to fall down?
Well, there's a jar at each end of the rope with a stick in it, and it's anchored with sand. And basically, the ants decided, oh, you know what we can do? We can dig out all of the sand. But that was the kind of the ballast for the stick. And I knew that if it went like a little bit slack, the rope, it would touch one of the lights and they'd all come pouring out. So it was like, I'm going to have to take you out, swap you for a bit of tube in the end. But, yeah. But mostly that's basically, I just check, make sure they're not going to escape and give them loads of water and a good feed before I go, like the night before.
Yeah. All right. So you if you were gone for a week, you would just do the same. You wouldn't have anyone come take a look at them or anything.
Not really. No, I just hope for the best.
You've not been damaged by leafcutters yet, I hear.
No, they do get out sometimes, but they're getting angry now. I've kind of, since I've upped them to 2 pods, and they've actually moved into 2 pods now, and they are getting quite like aggressive when there's not food, and it's like, oh no, what have I done? I think any day they're gonna bust out quite bad. I get the odd like straggler, but soon it'll happen. Like bounce.
Yeah, gotta love leafcutters. You can look out for that. Okay, what about you, Lynn? What do you do to prepare for a vacation? What did you do when you prepared for your 13-day week vacation?
Well, for Antcom, of course, I checked the water, and I made sure that all the bigger colonies that can handle it got a sugar cube, and the bigger colonies also got a jelly cup, just to keep them busy, because if they get bored, they will test the barriers. I have upped their protein for a few days, just so they could stock up. And in this time, I actually had my boyfriend staying behind and checking the ants and actually taking care of all the ants, even though I just wanted him to take care of a few colonies. But every time he was done feeding one of the colonies, he was like, oh, and this one, what do they need? Oh, and this one, and what do they need? And he just went 3 hours or 4 hours taking care of all my ants to make sure they all, and that's kind of funny because I have these huge colonies who would not like have any profit from like a baby red runner as feeding, because I had the baby red runners staying there for the colonies that need them, like I'm caring currently for a small Aerodimyrmex from someone else, and the Phydolis Sinica, was it the Sinica? I don't even remember. Small colonies, they get the baby roaches just so they can drag it into the nest and everything. And he gave the big colonies one of those tiny roaches, and was like, oh, now they got the protein. And it was kind of cute, but it was so stupid. So stuff like that.
Well, it's very cute that he's helping out at home. Is it something he normally does with the ants, or is it just all you?
I take care of all the animals in the house. So he pretty much never bothers with any of the animals. He doesn't have to, because they're my pets, of course. So that was new for him, and he had to grab and kill the roach babies as well. So it was quite a challenge because they're fast.
Yeah, and it's never funny to take a life away. I mean, you get used to it when you just do it every time you feed, but I remember like the first time you had to take a roach up. Like mealworms, they're not that hard because you just take them up and they kind of just... Well, actually, they wiggle quite a bit, but it's like easy because they're tiny and you just kind of snip. But when you feed like a bigger roach, it's just... There's so many motions and the juices everywhere when you cut and all of this. So that's why I went for the pre-killed route, so it wouldn't be that hard. Just cut a frozen roach in a few pieces.
One other thing I forgot that's actually pretty important. I always check the weather, and if it's summer, I actually turn off the heating, which sounds weird, but it's actually beneficial because you'd rather have your ants a little bit cooler than overheating by accident. Yeah,
I would say that definitely makes sense because you lose the control when you're not home. It's definitely also one of the things I was scared with my leafcutters was the temperature in the room, but luckily my room before was quite cold. And it's very scary not to know the temperature of my new room. Because I've just moved. But yeah, is there any things to look out for especially? Because I noticed that you originally didn't say you fed them protein, Lynn. Is there a reason why you're not... Well, you said you fed them proteins on the longer stays, but on the short stays you don't? Or...
Like when I go for 3 days?
Yeah.
No, I don't do specifically anything different than their usual schedule.
All right. So I think to sum it up, the things to look out for is definitely make sure they have enough water, and escape bear preventions are checked, because I would say that's the two main things, and also upcoming weather, like you said, Lynn. I personally have a hard time if you feed the colony too much protein. I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but I've experienced it a few times when the food starts to rot, because if you're not there for an entire week, you don't want to overfeed them. You don't want to underfeed them. You want to feed them something that they can take care of, because if they take care of the food, well, within 2 or 3 days, it's like pretty dry, the skin of the roach or whatever, and it's alright, then they're just a little bit hungry when you return. But if you feed them way too much, the food starts to become wet and starts to mold, and that's really not something you want, especially not if you're gone. But it's one of the more common questions. I don't know, have you guys been asked this before, Jake?
But like especially in my small ants, because I have to see a lot of their outworld, like the food goes moldy quite fast. So I guess I normally give the whole setup like a deep clean before I go as well, and then I just kind of leave the moldy food in, if you get what I mean. It kind of stays in there, but then I stick it in one of my bowls so it doesn't really go anywhere, to be honest. And then when I get back, it's like, oh, take that out.
I mean, I guess you can't do much. You can't just leave ants. You need someone to come and take care of them. If it's for a longer time, just because I think they can survive without protein and sugar. It will hinder the colony. It will stop them from growing for that month that you're gone, or week just you're gone. But you definitely need to make sure that, first of all, they have water. Second of all, that they're not escaping. And maybe third of all, that it's not too hot. So you need someone to come by them. I don't think you can just leave your ants for one. Well, maybe I think 1 week is like. Okay, guys, let's summon the question. Lynn, what would you say is the maximum you can leave your ants without anyone stopping by to look at them?
Well, I'm gonna say my favorite thing. It depends on the species.
God's sake.
Because my Camponotus and Formicas and Lasius and stuff like that, I would gladly, I would be aware. No, what's the right word? I wouldn't be afraid for leaving them for 2 weeks or more.
2 weeks.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Without any food except for day one, then.
Yeah, the water of course topped off, and the jellies, and making sure that they have sugar cubes. They will manage, because Camponotus, for example, they will have the walking fridge, whatever they have. That.
Yeah.
And if I cut down the temperature and it becomes a little bit cooler and everything, they're like, oh, something's the matter with nature. And they will figure it out. Their ants are not dumb, and they will recycle their workers if needed. They will prioritize certain kinds of food, and they will make sure that the queen stays alive and fed. So it works out. But for species like the Myrmaceas, and the Manicas and the Myrmicas, I would not recommend trying this.
What would your maximum be for Manica then, and Myrmicea?
Without food?
Well, except for feeding on day one. Yeah.
Yeah. I think 7 days. They might be able to push it for 10 days, but it gives me goosebumps. I wouldn't recommend.
I think the colony will be just fine. They may just eat all of the larvae, and that's just not fun if it's a Myrmicea or a Paraponera clavata and you just got set months back. I don't think the queen will die, because she just needs water to stay alive for pretty much a month out, I guess. But I think it's most of all hurting the colony short term, because if you are having a good growth and you just go away for 2 weeks, the growth may just be gone when you come back, and they may just have eaten all of the brood to stay healthy and alive. So I would say generally, again, I think actually what you said, Lynn, is very good. 7 days for semicloustral / Manica, Harpagnathus, all of these species that needs live food and doesn't really have a big social stomach, and 2 weeks, I think that's about it before the colony starts to take serious damage if it's a Camponotus species or general, no more simple ants. I accept if it's a small colony. I think if it's a young colony, I think you should stick to the 1 week rule and not necessarily wait for 2 weeks, because they may not have the same food storage capability. But then again, hang on. But then again, like you said, Lynn, if you just feed them up preparing for the vacation, like if you boost them with protein the days coming up to the vacation days, they will generally have their reserves full. But Jake, what do you think for leaving your ants? What would the maximum be for you?
Well, same numbers, to be honest. Like 2 weeks for most hardy ants. 4 weeks, to be honest. If it was like Mesobarbarus and stuff, I'd have no worries about leaving them for like 4 weeks, as long as they got enough water.
And seeds, I guess.
But yeah, a week for kind of the more delicate, fragile girls. I'd put the Formica into that bracket as well, I think, there. Just because of like the way that some ants lay, you don't really want them eating their babies. And the Formica, they like lay their waves, and you don't really want kind of to wait for the next wave, because sometimes they're like, nah, it's time for bed now, and it's like, oh, what?
Yeah, again, I think it comes down to the priorities. If you have someone that can come by, I would always go with a midweek feeding, and I would say, I mean, generally that's what I do. If you can get someone to come by midweek and feed them some protein, and they don't need to clean them. It will get dirty. Hopefully some mold can break out, but at least they're not starving. Well, and if you have issues with mites, perhaps no. But is there any things we need to avoid, Jake?
Well, you've always got to, you've all said now, but keep an eye out if it's summer. So if it's summer, don't leave them as long, because you never know when it's going to get super hot. Kind of like Wakushi the other day. I think one day the sun got into his little vivarium, and it just warmed it up a little bit for a little part of the day, and that was it. The fire ant queen was dead.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I heard that as well. He also had some. Yeah, it's
the
insane.
curtain shut. I guess it's another thing.
Yeah, that's actually what I did with my leaf cutters. I left them at summer, and I just closed all the curtains, because curtains can retract or stop a lot of the heat coming through. Because I remembered my ant room, my entire apartment was 27 to 30 degrees in all of the rooms except my ant room, which was still only 23 a day, because there was just never any sun coming in there. It was a little bit sad, but at least the ants did not get cooked a single time. Because the thing you gotta remember is, maybe you sit in the sun, you just move away, because it's a little bit toasty. But ants, they sit in the little tiny sit-ups, and not only do they get toasty, they get maybe 5 to 10 times the heat, because the heat doesn't escape. It just gets hotter and hotter and hotter. The humidity, the water starts to evaporate, and it gets very humid in there. And that's how I lost one of my colonies in the past. Well, actually I didn't, but I almost lost my Herculinus. That's a good video if you want to check that out. An old video where pretty much my ants, they were starved from air, from being in a small environment that got cooked or got so hot that they pretty much couldn't breathe. And luckily I had faith with me, and I was so much in love with the colony that I put them all out in a tray, and surprisingly enough, they woke up. But Lynn, what would you say are good things to try to avoid? Other than what we've already... Well, a repeat is also okay.
You don't want to leave out like a lot of... Well, wait, actually I would be debunked if I'm gonna say that.
What?
Well, I always make the comment like, don't give ants too much sugar water, because it can ferment and then the ants can die, or get nasty, or what's the good word? It's not fermenting because
the sugar
apparently
can
ants,
get toxic.
Yeah, but some people are like, no, and it doesn't happen, blah blah. So I'm not really sure if I should say that. I would say do not leave honey water. Do not leave honey water, because honey water does go bad because of the bacteria in there. And do not leave honey either, because it pulls out the moisture from the air, and in turn pulls out the moisture from the ants that eat it. So that's not a good idea.
Is that just a general fact that you shouldn't really use honey, or pure honey?
Well, you can use honey. Just make sure that your ants have a lot of water. But if
Ah.
you're going away, then it might not be the
Okay.
best idea.
I see. That's good tips.
If your setup has a lid, make sure to use the lid when you're going away. That way, if they break the barrier, they will
Yeah.
still be inside of their setup. Make sure that any plugs are in good health and not like wearing down, because then they will chew through the plugs. What else can we add?
That's another good one. Yeah, especially if you have like cotton stoppers or whatever.
Got
Yeah.
the Miramax flashbacks. Oh no.
Well, leaf
I was
cutter
going to say Lynn's
flashbacks.
got a story behind like each bit I bet.
I think I have. The thing is, like, I'm glad I had my leaf cutters because I learned what not to do. In the past, right, when I had two tubes that didn't really connect correctly, I just put cotton in this above the smaller tube, and boom, a small tube could connect to a big tube because the cotton, it would fill out. It would be all perfectly good. It would fill out and sit in there snug. But my hungry leaf cutter ants would just start pulling, and in the end escape. And that's why I learned to use tape instead. If you just have electrical tape, put it around the smaller tube a few times, slowly but surely it grows, and boom, you can stick it together. Way safer than cotton, but also has a limited lifetime. But for my leaf cutters, that worked for. I never escaped that part, but I'm sure if they want to, they can bite the tape as well. But yeah, life hack for you all of there. Don't use cotton, use tape instead, and slowly but surely grow the tube to the correct size so you can push them together. But I think you summed it up very nicely, Lynn. I mean, it's not a long podcast by any means, but there is to just sum it up. Make sure that the colony have plenty of water. Make sure that they're not in the sun or that they won't get cooked while you're gone. Have some sort of, maybe put them in a basement or something. But a basement is cold. But then again, it's better for them to be cold and alive than better cold and alive than cooked and dead. So I guess that is some sort of ideas. But make sure they have water. Make sure that you update their escape prevention. Keep a lid on if you can, because if the prevention fails, well, you have a lid. And like you also said, Lynn, check all the plugs. Make sure they're not biting through any of the different things around the place. And a week for a little bit more spicy ants and fragile ants, and up to around 2 weeks for more stubborn ants. And recommended to have someone come by a few times a week to check up on them, if possible. Is at least what I would say.
Another addition to that, if you do not have anyone who's willingly to watch over your ants, reach out to a fellow ant keeper that lives in the same country as you and ask if they can watch your ants.
Or that's a really good idea, because you've just said that you're just doing that right now, right, Lynn?
Well, that's a different story, but I have for multiple occasions have actually had Stein's ants in my house for like, I think it's been 2 years that they have been on, when he goes on to holiday, that they've stayed over with me.
Yeah.
So it's fun for me as well, because I get to have all these really crazy species for a small period of time without actually buying and keeping them.
Yeah. That's a great tip. I know some stores, I think Antics does it, but some stores also can take them on holidays, and you can just put the colonies at a store. I'm sure pretty much if a store has a physical location, they would probably be willing to take care of a colony for a week or two and a few colonies against payment probably, but still maybe worth it if you don't know anyone, if you don't trust anyone. I don't know. Is there anything else we need to add, starting with you, Jake? Do you feel like we've covered the topic enough for leaving on a little vacation without the ants?
I definitely would emphasize jelly cup, just because they don't ferment, and they are pretty good, to be fair, and I always end up leaving some.
It's funny you say that don't ferment. You say they don't ferment. That's because they don't go bad, right?
Sugar.
Well, yeah, I guess so. The outside can go moldy as well, but then they'll dig around it and just dig into a fresh bit underneath, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's true. I was about to say mine always molds if it's in there for a week and the ants don't take it off. It's just the top just starts molding. But that wouldn't be a concern for you.
Nah, not really. Not if it's going to be taken out when I get back, sort of thing. I'd rather they kind of, they're not super stupid. Like, well, most of them. So they'll be like, oh, that bit's mouldy. What we'll do is we'll go find a bit that isn't mouldy and eat that bit instead.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Lynn? Do you agree?
Well, my ants finish Jelly Cup within a day, so it's not a problem for me.
More jelly cups then?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
We'll
it
give
was
them
pretty
10.
funny because my Nicobarensis they finish within 3 hours. And my boyfriend was checking on them and he's like, what the fuck, it's finished, you know? So he was like, and how do I add another cup? Because there are ants all over the outworld, you know? How do I put it down without squashing any? And I was like, just move it in little circles so they move out of the way. And then there was an ant on his hand and he bit. That was a major and he got bitten. And I'm surprised because they actually hurt him. Because he was complaining that it hurt and he had this little bubble and everything, and I was like, what the fuck? How did that happen? Because they're so calm with me. They just walk around my hands and arms without causing any trouble. But for him, they bit him. So that's kind of funny.
Yeah, I think well, my advice to adding stuff like that is just a quick blow and drop. Blow on the ants, blow a little circle, and drop the jelly in the middle of the food, if you don't want to hurt them at least. That's what I did with my messer, at least. Every time I needed to change the water tube, I was just blowing at them all like, oh, get away. And as soon as I had a second where it was just a clear line, put in the tube, good. Good, no casualties here. But I feel like we've covered the topic quite nicely. Again, the safe option is just to send the ants over to a friend or to a store, if possible. Reach out to someone on Facebook. I'm sure that's someone locally to you. Personally, for me, I would rather my ants would just be here. And luckily, I have the whole cat excuse. And then people can stop by and feed the cats and check on the ants. Not necessarily feed them, but just visual contact that they're not escaping. I like I said, I'm traumatized. Too many leafcutter escapes. But yeah, I think we should go in towards the weekly updates. And last week I think I got a little bit happy talking. Because after not having done a podcast for a month, we heard a lot of Lynn and we heard a lot of Oliver, and we just completely skipped Jake. I realized that when I heard the podcast after, I'm like, dude, did I just skip Jake completely?
I did think, like, have I done my thing yet? And it was like, oh, that doesn't matter anyway.
Oh, don't say that. That makes it worse. But Jake, any weekly/monthly updates then?
So, like, if you'd asked this last
Jake,
week,
Jake,
I would have...
come with the big. Come with the big. We want the big whole. What's happened? 5 minutes speaks now. What has happened?
So, like, if you'd asked me this last week, I would have said, like, absolutely nothing really. Like, William and his family are still kind of sitting in their little cube that I got from AntCon with, like, soil in it.
Yeah.
And haven't moved out. And, yeah, that was about it. And, like, but this week, finally, William and his, like, that lot, they've moved into their little proper nest. All the other ants, except for the new Carabera diversa, are doing well. And because I've had a week off as well, today I went out on my bike and may have stumbled across a couple Formica fusca colonies.
Oh,
which,
nice.
Yeah, I've wanted some of them for ages. And I've been looking for them for so long. And finally, like, found, like, 2 as well in one day. So it was like, oh my God.
Oh, that's nice. Are you gonna look for nuptials then, or are you out with the shovel, Jake?
Just flipping rocks, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
Like, yeah, and it was like, oh my God, I like flipped a rock, and suddenly there were loads. So I pulled out like this cup that I had, and like scooped them up. And it was like, oh my God!
Did you capture the queen, or?
Yeah, and it was like, wow,
nice.
This is the best thing ever. Not that I'm recommending that you go out and capture Formica fusca, but it was excellent. Now I've got this lovely little colony, and of course I got a mystery box at AntCon, and I've got like Gen 5 bits and bobs which I'm using now. So they've got this little setup.
I saw my first actual Myrmica colony this week. I was out at a customer's house and I saw like a trail that was like 10-15 meters long, and I found the nest and like, dude, That's the first time I've seen an actual Myrmica colony in Denmark. Like, I've seen a few workers here and there through my many years of ant keeping, but that's the first time I spotted the colony. Yeah, thank you for the update, Jake. Hopefully we won't forget you again. Sorry. Lynn, what are your weekly updates?
Well, for me this week it's nice and peaceful over here. I'm actually working more on the animal room and everything around it and that kind of stuff than actually worrying about the ants. So Peggy and her babies are doing great. The workers are really skittish. They are like popping up in the outworld and then scanning, and then, oh no, scary, and then they go back. And they're actually really actively feeding the new larvae as well, and still watching over them, standing guard and everything, so that's kind of cute. The fungus of the leaf cutters is growing nicely. I'm still struggling with the humidity because it's not where I want it to be, but they don't seem bothered by it, so I'm guessing that under the cup it's actually pretty alright.
So...
And interestingly enough, when I give them bramble cuttings, they don't like the fresh bramble. They only want the dark green old bramble leaves. So that's pretty weird, I think.
Yeah, it's very strange, different than usual. Well, again, none of my colonies have ever liked dandelion, and that seems like to be the big go-to in the UK. So I don't know if the Danish dandelion just doesn't taste as nice, because neither my acros or my adan ever liked that. So that's very strange.
Oh, yeah, both mine go absolutely crazy for dandelion.
Yeah, so I don't know if we just have some weirder tasting dandelion. But so what do you mean you have issues with upkeeping of the humidity? Isn't it just like filling up the chamber multiple times until it's like glimting?
Yeah, well, I actually have like this layer of water inside of the pot, so it should be fine. But the humidity sensor is not going up that much. It's just staying on the same level. And the humidity sensor is on top of the pot, so not near the water source. But yeah, it makes me a little bit uncomfortable because it isn't where it used to be, because it used to be 99% at all times.
Yeah, I was about to say it should just always be 99.
Yeah, it's not. It's 88.
Oh.
So, but the colony doesn't seem phased or harmed, and the fungus is looking really good. And I've added some springtails in there as well, just to keep up with everything else, like because the ants are a bit dirty sometimes. And there's this little jelly cup that I filled up with cocos humus, the ground spill. Gonna turn Dutch here. the ground substrate, and then I moistured that, and now the ants have actually made the entrance of the little cup smaller with it as well. I think I might have mentioned it last week as well. I'm not sure.
I don't think you did. That's cool, at least.
Yeah, so they're building. They used to do that with leaves, but now they're doing that with the ground. So I guess that's a benefit.
Yeah.
And it's pretty fun to watch as well. But they're still they're doing all right. They're doing good. There's a lot of workers when I pick up the pot, so you see a lot of swarming on top of the fungus.
That's nice. That's great to hear. I would say I had the same issue with my one humidity sensor. It just started going down and never was at 99. And at one point just tried to swap them because I of course had two. And when I swapped it, the other one said 99. So I think that just, for me, I had a sensor that said 99 for weeks and weeks and weeks, and suddenly it just stopped. And I don't know if the sensor was just poor quality or what it was. It was not the same as the new ones. There was some older models, but yeah, I don't know if that helps or not. But yeah, I mean, here in my end room, not too much news. I feel like I just don't have any time of the day at the moment. Like I want to start making videos for real, and I just don't have the time. Focused on making the apartment still. Very slowly getting there. I would say the only two big news is my Nemesia Fulipest queen. She has a big fat larvae. I don't know if I mentioned that last week, but I found it now, and it had been hiding somehow. And also my Paraponera clavata queen has a massive larvae. I have no clue when it's gonna start spinning its cocoon, but I tell you, it's like close to the size of the queen at this stage. It's so massive, I can't believe how big it is. So yeah, that's lovely. Looking forward to having a cocoon for like 2 months afterwards, but hopefully it'll start spinning a cocoon very soon. Also, I have a massive larvae. I have like 3 big larvae, and now I have like another 4 tiny larvae and another like 4 eggs. So there's just so much brood in different stages, and she doesn't even have her first worker. It just looks like it's a full-blown colony looking at the brood. So that's lovely, and that's of course the bullet ant queen. So yeah, luckily she's doing good so far. No complaints here. But with that all being said, done and dusted, that is how to take care of your ants when you leave for a vacation, or how to prepare your ants for a vacation. Next week is an exciting week, and we're going back to the old schedule of a discussion, an interview, a discussion, an interview. And then from episode 50 and on to 59, it's just all interviews. So there's a ton of interviews coming up. So be sure to, come with some good questions in the different areas. So I'm probably going to be requesting questions on the Ant Oliver extra account, because that seems to be where a lot of people are active and coming with good questions. So if you have questions for the upcoming YouTubers, hang on, you know what? Let me just read it out, because I don't think it's actually going to change much. So you get a little bit of what's going to happen now. For episode 48, which will be recorded 2 hours after you're listening to this, because we record 2 hours after the podcast released the weeks before, we are doing an interview with El Mundo des las Hormigas. I don't know how to say that name.
El Mundo de las Amigas.
Exactly. Sounded more correctly than mine. So that is, of course, the biggest Spanish-speaking ant YouTuber in the world. So that's super cool. I'm gonna refer to him as David, because David is way easier. Then for episode 49, we have a suggestion from Fantafason, who wants to hear a little bit of an episode of keeping multi-species setups. So, of course, more than one species in one setup. So that's for episode 49. In episode 50, we do a live stream like we did for episode 25, because it's a special episode 50. So yeah, look out for that. 51, we have interview with Antcube/Ant Stores, because, well, they have 2 names. 52, we are going for a Britannia interview. These may be swapped a little bit back and forth, because we only prepared like 2 weeks ahead. But Ants Britannia for 52. Charlie from Ant Farm Supplies, episode 53. 54, we'll see if we can get Big Ross on board. 55, Wakushi interview. It's been a while since we've talked with Wakushi at this stage. And 56, we are taking a look at what feeders to use. 57, Hans HQ interview, if we manage to get a good phone line. I've tried a few times, but he seems to be a very busy man. 58, Ant Antics. And finally, 59, we have a basic ant interview. And so that's the upcoming episodes for the next 2-3 months, I guess. But with that being said, that has been it for episode 47. I want to say thank you for listening in. The Antpod releases new episodes every Wednesday, hopefully. And if there's a topic you would like to hear more about, send a message to the Antpod Instagram. We may still swap the list around, so now you just have a rough idea of what's going to happen for the next 20 episodes. And with that being said, you will hear more from us at the Antpod next week.